It was supposed to be just another lazy Sunday brunch at my parents' house. You know the kind, mismatched plates pulled from different sets, coffee that had gone lukewarm 20 minutes ago, and the usual small talk floating around the table about work deadlines and whether it might actually rain this week. My sister Laura had brought her new boyfriend Ethan to meet the family for the first time. He was one of those effortlessly charming guys, tall, quick with a smile, the type who could strike up a conversation about paint drying and somehow make it fascinating. I could see why Laura was smitten. I'd been married to James for 8 years. We weren't exactly the picture-perfect couple you see in romantic comedies, but we'd built something solid together. At least, that's what I'd always told myself. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our comfortable silences. It felt like enough. The conversation was flowing easily when Mom asked Ethan about his job. He worked in tech, something about developing mobile apps, and he launched into this animated story about a project that had gone spectacularly wrong. The whole table was hooked. Dad was nodding along like he understood code, Laura was beaming with pride, and even my teenage nephew had looked up from his phone. James, though, stayed quiet. He just sat there sipping his coffee, his expression unreadable. I didn't think much of it at first. He'd never been the chatty type, especially around new people. He preferred to observe, to listen, to take things in before jumping into conversations. Then Laura, half teasing in that way siblings do, turned to me with a grin. "You're so lucky James is handy around the house, Anna. Ethan can barely change a light bulb without calling tech support." Everyone chuckled, and I felt that familiar rush of being the center of attention. I grinned, seizing the moment like I always did. "Oh, you have no idea," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "James thinks he's Mr. Fix-It, but last week he tried to repair our dishwasher and turned the entire kitchen into a water park. I'm still finding puddles behind the refrigerator." The table erupted in laughter. Ethan slapped his knee, Mom covered her mouth to hide her giggles, and even Dad let out one of his rare belly laughs. It felt incredible, like I'd just won some unspoken family approval contest. So naturally, I kept going. "And his cooking," I added, leaning forward conspiratorially. "The man could burn water. Last month he tried making spaghetti for dinner, and we ended up ordering pizza because the smoke alarm wouldn't stop screaming at us." More laughter, louder this time. I was on a roll. James shifted slightly in his seat, but I didn't catch the way his jaw tightened. I was too busy basking in the spotlight, feeling clever and entertaining. Oh, and don't even get me started on his sense of direction. I continued, really warming up now. He's got this fancy GPS app on his phone, but he insists he knows better shortcuts. We once ended up in the middle of a cornfield because he refused to listen to it. I'm talking actual corn stalks scraping the car windows. By now the whole family was in stitches. Laura was wiping tears from her eyes, and Ethan looked over at James with a big grin. "Man, you're a legend, James. Anna's got some stories." I glanced at my husband, expecting to see his usual good-natured smirk, or maybe hear one of his self-deprecating comebacks. He'd always been good at rolling with my teasing, laughing along with everyone else. But instead, he just set his coffee mug down, slow and deliberate, like he was thinking carefully about each movement. "Funny, right?" he said, his voice low and cutting through all the noise. The room went still. You could have heard a pin drop. "You know what's even funnier?" he continued, his words measured and quiet. "Spending 8 years trying to keep this family happy, only to realize I'm just the idiot everyone gets to laugh at." It was like someone had flipped a switch. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. I tried to play it off, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Oh, come on, James. It's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." But he was already standing up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Not to me, Anna," he said, looking directly at me for for the first time all morning. Not anymore. And then he walked out. He didn't slam the door or raise his voice or make a scene. He just left, and somehow that made it so much worse. The silence that followed swallowed us whole. Mom stared down at her plate like it contained the answers to life's mysteries. Laura fidgeted with her napkin, and Ethan mumbled something about needing some fresh air before stepping out onto the back porch. I just sat there, stunned, telling myself he'd come back after a walk around the block to cool off. He didn't. Hours later, my phone buzzed with a text. Staying at Mike's for a bit. Need to think. Mike was his college buddy who lived across town in a converted garage apartment. I called immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted back, "I'm sorry. Let's talk." Nothing. That night, alone in our too-quiet house, I replayed the whole scene over and over. How had I not seen it? I'd always poked fun at James, his quirks, his little domestic disasters, his stubborn refusal to ask for directions. I thought it was harmless, even endearing. Couples tease each other, right? That's what people do. But somewhere along the way, it had stopped being a joke to him. I found an old photo of us from a camping trip early in our marriage. We were grinning by a campfire, arms wrapped around each other, no audience except the stars. Back then, I saw him as my rock, my partner, my best friend. When had he become just a punchline? The next day, Laura called. "What happened yesterday, Anna?" Ethan said James looked like he'd been hit by a truck. I'd brushed it off at first. He's just overreacting. You know how men can be. But her words stuck with me. Then Mom texted, "Check on James. He's a good man." Even my nephew sent me a meme of a sad puppy with the caption, "Fix it, Aunt Anna." Everyone could see it but me. I drove to Mike's place that afternoon, my heart pounding as I rehearsed different apologies in my head. Mike answered the door with his arms crossed, looking like he was guarding Fort Knox. "He's not here," he said before I could even speak. "Where is he?" "Left this morning. Said he needed space." "Space from what?" I snapped, frustration boiling over. Mike's expression softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. "From you, Anna. He said he's tired of feeling small." That hit me like a punch to the gut. I went home and sat on our couch, staring at the indent in the cushion where James always sat. I tried to remember the last real conversation we'd had, not about schedules or bills or whose turn it was to take out the trash, but actually about us. I couldn't. Had I been so busy trying to prove I was clever and entertaining that I'd forgotten he had feelings too? Days turned into a week. I left voicemails that rambled on too long. I sent texts that probably sounded desperate. I even wrote him a letter by hand, something I hadn't done since high school. "I messed up, James. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please come home." No reply. Then one evening, just as I was getting ready for bed, I heard his key in the front door. My heart leaped, but when I saw his face, I knew he wasn't there to stay. He was just there to talk. "I've been thinking," he said, standing in the doorway like he might bolt at any second. "I don't know who I am to you anymore, Anna. Am I the guy you love, or am I just the guy you laugh at? Because I can't keep wondering." "I love you," I said, my voice breaking. "God, James, I'm so sorry. I didn't see what I was doing to you, to us." He nodded slowly, but his eyes looked distant, guarded. "I believe you're sorry. But I need time to figure out if I can trust us, again." He left, and I spent the next month doing the hardest work I'd ever done. Looking at myself in the mirror and not liking what I saw. Therapy helped. Dr. Martinez, a kind woman with graying hair and infinite patience, helped me understand that I'd been using humor as a way to feel big, not realizing it was making James feel invisible. I'd been performing our marriage instead of living it, turning our private moments into public entertainment. When we diminish our partners to get a laugh, she said during one session. We're really just trying to elevate ourselves. But true intimacy means building each other up, especially when no one else is watching. Slowly, very slowly, James and I started talking again. Short phone calls at first, then coffee meetings that felt almost like first dates. It wasn't easy. We had to dig into years of unspoken hurts, all the little cuts that had accumulated like paper cuts until they became one big wound. But we both wanted to try. I need to know you see me, he told me during one of those coffee dates, his hands wrapped around his mug like it was an anchor. Not as a character in one of your stories, but as me. As the person who loves you enough to fix things badly and get lost on purpose, sometimes just to spend more time with you in the car. That's when I really started crying. Ugly crying, right there in the coffee shop. Because I realized that all those things I'd made fun of weren't character flaws. They were love letters. Every failed repair job was him trying to make our home better. Every wrong turn was him wanting to extend our time together. Every burned dinner was him attempting to take care of me after a long day. Now we're rebuilding, and it's not the same relationship we had before. It's better, rawer, and more real. I've learned that love isn't about being the loudest person in the room or getting the biggest laugh. It's about lifting each other up, especially when no one else is watching. James still can't cook spaghetti without setting off the smoke alarm. He still takes wrong turns despite having GPS. And yes, he still occasionally floods the kitchen when he tries to fix the sink. But now when these things happen, instead of storing them up as ammunition for my next performance, I see them for what they really are. Evidence of a man who loves me enough to keep trying, even when he knows he might fail. And I love him enough to let him try, without an audience, without a punchline, just with the quiet appreciation of someone who finally understands that the best love stories aren't the ones that get the biggest laughs. They're the ones that no one else ever hears. Last Sunday, we went back to my parents' house for brunch. Same mismatched plates, same lukewarm coffee, same family gathered around the table. Laura was there with Ethan. They're engaged now, planning a spring wedding. Mom was fussing over everyone as usual, and Dad was telling the same old stories we'd all heard a dozen times. But something was different this time. When my nephew started teasing his girlfriend about her terrible parallel parking, I watched James's face carefully. I saw the slight wince, the way his shoulders tensed, and without thinking, I jumped in. "Hey, at least she tries," I said with a gentle smile. Some of us are still working on not hitting the curb every single time. I winked at my nephew's girlfriend, who looked grateful for the backup. James caught my eye across the table and smiled. Not the polite smile he'd worn for months after he came back, but a real one. The kind that reached his eyes and reminded me why I fell in love with him in the first place. After brunch, as we were saying our goodbyes, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. "You two seem different," she said, drying the same plate for the third time. "Better." "We're learning," I told her. "Learning how to love each other the right way." She nodded like she understood, even though I knew she and Dad had their own story, their own lessons learned the hard way over 43 years of marriage. On the drive home, James reached over and took my hand, something he'd started doing again recently. His palm was warm and slightly calloused from his latest project, refinishing our back deck. He'd been working on it for weeks, taking his time, asking me what color stain I preferred instead of just guessing. "Thank you," he said quietly, eyes still on the road. I knew what he meant, but I played dumb. For what? For seeing me today. For really seeing me. I squeezed his hand tighter. "I'm still learning how to do that. Some days are better than others." "That's okay," he said. "We've got time." "We've got time." Such a simple phrase, but it felt like a promise. Not the kind of promise you make at a wedding in front of 200 people, but the quieter kind you make on a random Sunday afternoon when you realize you want to keep choosing each other, even when it's hard. That evening, James was back in the kitchen, attempting to make dinner. I could hear pots clattering and the occasional muttered curse word. The old me would have been composing jokes in my head, storing up material for the next family gathering. But instead, I just sat on the couch reading my book, letting him figure it out. 20 minutes later, he appeared in the doorway looking sheepish. So, I may have slightly burned the chicken. I looked up from my book. Slightly. Okay, completely. And the smoke alarm is mad at me again. In the old days, this would have been my moment to shine. I would have launched into a whole routine about his cooking disasters, making him the punchline of another story. But now I just stood up and walked over to him. "Pizza?" I asked. "Pizza," he agreed, looking relieved. As we waited for delivery, we sat on our back deck, the one he'd been refinishing with such careful attention. The evening air was cooling down, and somewhere in the distance, a neighbor was grilling something that actually smelled good. "Do you ever miss it?" James asked suddenly. "Miss what?" "Being the funny one. Getting all the laughs." I considered his question seriously. Did I miss being the center of attention? Did I miss the rush of making people laugh at his expense? Sometimes, I admitted. But not as much as I missed you. He was quiet for a long moment, then, "I miss feeling like I could try things without worrying about becoming your next story." "You can," I said. "Try things, I mean. Fail spectacularly if you want to. I promise not to turn it into entertainment." He smiled at that. "Even if I flood the kitchen again. Even then. Though maybe we should put towels down first, just in case." We both laughed, not because I'd made him the joke, but because we were in it together now. The kitchen floods, the burned dinners, the wrong turns that led us through cornfields. All of it was ours to share, not mine to perform. Later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, I caught James looking at that old camping photo I'd left on the dresser. We looked so young in it, so hopeful. Like we had no idea what was coming. The misunderstandings, the hurt feelings, the way love could become careless if you weren't paying attention. "We were happy then," he said. "We're happy now too," I replied. "Just differently. More carefully." He nodded, understanding what I meant. Careful love. The kind that pays attention, that protects instead of exposes, that builds up instead of tears down for a laugh. As I turned off the light, I thought about all the stories I'd never tell. The sweet things James whispered when he thought I was asleep. The way he still left me little notes in my lunch bag. The fact that he'd been secretly taking cooking classes online, trying to surprise me with a decent meal. These were the stories that mattered now, not because they were funny, but because they were ours. Private and precious, and absolutely not for sharing. In the darkness, I felt James reach for my hand one more time. "I love you, Anna," he whispered. "I love you too," I whispered back. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to add a punchline.